Tashi Dele friends, welcome back to the Peja podcast. Before you watch or listen any further, please like, share, and subscribe. We have big dreams for Peja podcast, and it can only be achieved through the help of every single one of you. So thank you, Tojana. In this episode, we have a very special guest in Shenpenn Khymsar. He is the director of Broken Wings and many other acclaimed movies. He's currently working on a Hollywood movie as well. In this episode, we also have a new co-host, Tidin Namdullah, a second year, rising third year student at American University. In this episode, we talk about so many different topics, taboo topics about the contradictions between Buddhist philosophy and the Tibetan community. We talk about how to inspire Tibetans, how to empower young Tibetans to chase on their dreams. We talk about the art of filmmaking. We also talk about Buddhism and the impact of Garo Rinpoche in all of our different lives. So it's going to be a wild episode. It's going to be a fun episode. So stay tuned and thank you so much. Welcome to Peja Podcast. So today we have a very special guest, Shenpenn La. Welcome to the Peja Podcast. Thank you for giving us your time. We are not RFA, we're not VOA, we don't have a big name, and we're not trying to be them. We're trying to be something different. But thank you for giving us this opportunity and your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So I think Namdu, you can begin.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name is Namde. I'm new to the Pidja podcast, and I'm so excited to be here. First of all, let me start off by saying, Shimbala, you're such a cool person. I watched a couple of videos of yours, and I just thought that everything that you were saying, it was just so true. And I think you are the true definition of what we call a rock star. But I'm really excited for you to be on this podcast and for us to hear more of your thoughts. So I guess a question that a lot of us are wondering is how did you get started in the film industry? It's really rare to see a Tibetan person making it mainstream, and I think it's really inspirational for a younger generation Tibetans who are also interested in the arts and media entertainment industry. And I was introduced to your work through the U.S. tour in Washington D.C., and most of our followers are younger Tibetans and Tibetans in the West who might not be familiar with your work. So, can you
Right.
just explain some films that you worked on?
So, firstly, thank you very much for having me. As a Tibetan and as a Chola, as a Chojo for you guys, I'm very proud of what you guys are doing. Like Tenzin Setup said, you're not VOA, you're not RFA, you're Purja Studio. So this is cool. It's important we have platforms like this, orchestrated by young Tibetans from all over the world and kind of binding everybody and weaving all of us together and kind of figuring out ways to inspire and support each other. So I commend you for doing this. And your question, how did I get into films? I've always been a major cinemaphile, if that's even a word, since I was a little kid, and I've been very um, influenced by literature and art since I was a little child. And I kind of, when I was growing up, the times were very tough, and so in hindsight, when I look back today, I feel like art and music and cinema and literature in general, books, comics, uh, that that world, that universe became my safe haven. That became a place where I would go and hide. That became my refuge. And then the involvement in the expressions of art uh, became my tool, um, to kind of survive in the crazy world. So that's how it started since I was a little child, and cinema always blew me away. I still remember when I was a kid. I was probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old when I first saw when I first saw a feature film in a movie theater. Those days it used to be single screen theaters with film, like, it wasn't digital. So I remember watching a film. I had absolutely no idea what it was. I had no idea, like, you're only 4 or 5 years old, and you're not exposed to anything like that ever before. But that experience of watching moving images on screen, and then sound, and then all these people in the theater, as a child, I know it did something there. The genesis, that there was something that happened to me, that caught me, that captivated me, that moved me in ways that I was never moved. You know, so I think the seed was planted then, and then as I grew older, when you face realities, and when you face life's challenges, and when you have your afflictions, and when you have your ups and downs in life, art, cinema, music, mainly music and film, uh, became my go-to place where I would kind of hide, and where I would transport myself into into that different world of cinema, and I would kind of take myself there in the story. And then I started kind of doing plays and writing stories and short stories, and then doing plays in school, and then ever since that, then I've been interested in cinema, and it's been many years, but it took a lot of time and self belief, and kind of honing the self belief, and cultivating the confidence to pursue uh, professionally, because in our community, as you guys know, even you said, we don't have a point of reference for us, especially my generation. We didn't have a point of reference where I could look up to other Tibetan filmmakers. We didn't have that, so it was very challenging and very difficult to kind of pursue and follow, and but I'm grateful, and I'm very, very fortunate and blessed to do what I love.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, like, from, yeah, me, even as a college student, what I'm seeing is that even that's a rare thing to do nowadays. Doing what you love, and you seem truly grateful and truly passionate. I remember in one of your interviews, you mentioned how when you were working in that corporate life, you were wearing a suit, you were all dressed nice. You know, the Tibetan community, the members of the Tibetan community thought you were on the top of the world. But then when you were at Penn Station, maybe dressed a little bit like hipster wise, whatever.
Yeah.
You got a call from
Long
you got a call from your mom from Darjeeling saying like, "What's
hair.
happening?" She was concerned. Um, that's a weird contradiction in our Tibetan community that's so ingrained with Buddhism. Right, Buddhism is supposed to be this big picture, um, big picture mindset, where you truly, even though it's big picture, you think about the individual perspective where they're coming from. We always try to empathize and have that compassion, understanding. Why do you think there's such a contradiction, or maybe is it because? Why do you think it's difficult for us Tibetans sometimes to grasp the true essence of His Holiness's teachings and Buddhist teachings and philosophy?
Ah, that's a huge, like a colossal question. I mean, there's probably, if one was to go anthropological on this, there's probably volumes of answers for that. Um, but since we don't have time for that kind of lecture, I'll try and concise as possible, as much as possible. See, I think, firstly, we Tibetans have to, especially younger generations, we have to realize that we Tibetans are born into a Buddhist culture. We're born into we're Buddhists by default, you know, uh, and there's a huge difference between uh, being culturally Buddhist and philosophically and psychologically Buddhist. You understand? And then on top of that, there are major sociopolitical reasons, as displaced people, as people that lost their country, and all of us, we were born in exile, you know. uh, kind of that displacement also, most of our ancestors, our parents, in your case, most likely your grandparents came from Tibet, not your parents, right? So uh, when the first exodus happened and when they started coming to India and Nepal, um, predominantly speaking, 99.999% of the Tibetans that came as refugees uh, really suffered because, we didn't have luxury, we didn't have money, and the language was new, the culture was new, the geography was new, the weather was new, the food was new. So, in that kind of environment, the most important thing was survival, right, for our parents and our grandparents. So, so when you come from that kind of psychological impact, you know, uh, there is no time or space for arts, unfortunately, because one has to figure out to make ends meet, and then they have to provide for their family, they have to provide for their children born in exile, and they have to kind of adjust with new cultures and new politics and new region and new neighbors and everything. So I think unfortunately art and the the importance of art um, all took a back seat. And then, our parents, everybody, focused on making ends meet and working hard. And then at that time, during our grandparents' time, when they came as refugees, we didn't have professionals, not even 1% of professionals in any field, right? So all they could do was, small businesses selling clothes, selling sweaters, doing lamso. Lamso means, working in the roads, building roads. Kulig yada lega pe, khalota pe mabu lega tenzu mabu chego kerwa. So, so because of that, I think the urgency and the need for them to instill in their children the importance of stability took paramount. It became paramount. So, and then that stability comes in, and then stability is all about working, making money, 9 to 5, and these became the conventional, model of stability is 9 to 5. You know, getting a salary. Uh, so these are some of the reasons why I think uh, we we have, for lack of a better word, we have these, or we struggle with the double standards. Uh, I mean, having said that, I'm speaking in defense of our culture right now and our parents and all. But
Mhm.
having said that, there is definitely uh, a certain amount of hypocrisy and certain amount of double standard also. And now that happens, I think, because as people, as Tibetans, it's been, you know, 2 3 generations now in exile, but majority of Tibetans, we have still not been able to break out of our little comfort zones
Yeah,
and
agree.
and move out. Like, you guys are in the US, you are fortunate because you were born there or raised there, or you're going to school, and when you go to school or colleges, you are having to sit with people from all backgrounds and all races. So it becomes a very natural environment for you. But for our elders and for the people who kind of first came to America or Europe or wherever, for them to break that comfort zone and go outside the community and assimilate with other people and other cultures was and is still a challenge, you know, because from a socio-cultural perspective, if you do not assimilate, then you will never be able to integrate. It's a very big, important thing. You know, in my case, what happened was, I grew up, even though I was born in exile, I grew up in Darjeeling, but I was fortunate enough to go to a very progressive, Injil Abdarwa. So I didn't have a lot of Tibetans in my school, very few Tibetans. In my class, I was the only Tibetan. So I grew up with all kinds of, kids from different backgrounds and different cultures and different religion. And then we were always encouraged to go up in front of the class or go up on stage and talk and, like raise our hands and speak and and then there was a lot of curricular activities that we took part in. And especially myself, I was very much into theatrics and elocution and quiz and, more. I wasn't as athletic as I would have loved to be. Uh,
Mhm.
uh, but in my case, when I went to America for the first time, I wasn't like a super young boy. I was about 19, 20. So I was still constructed when I reached America,
Mhm.
uh,
Yeah.
but because of my background, and then because Darjeeling had such a rich culture of Western music, and cinema. So when I reached America, I wanted to explore that world. I wanted to go to see shows, and I wanted to go see Broadways, and I wanted to go see where, I don't know, like Guns N' Roses and
Mhm.
Metallica would be performing. I wanted to go
Yeah.
see Aerosmith. I wanted to see like Run
Pink
DMC and
Floyd.
Public Enemy, and all these hip hop artists, and Snoop Dogg and Biz Markie. And so I was exposed to that, even though I was like a very, 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 very tiny percent of that Tibetan.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
I made sure that when I reached America, I would work, odd jobs and all, and then I would do whatever I could, and then I would go to these shows. So for me, saving money and making money, uh, unfortunately or fortunately, it was never the main goal. I wanted to be culturally enriched. I wanted to be rich in terms of circle of friends. I wanted to. So I, even though I had an accent back there, I know I was very, young. You're 19, and so I came back. I came with a very thick, I think, Indian accent at that time, but I was still kind of young enough to, adapt. So so I assimilated into the American culture, and into the American social fabric. So once I assimilated, then I became very familiar with them and their world. And then I became a part of their world, and I became very comfortable with them. So once I well assimilated with them, then I integrated my culture into my circle. So Tibetan culture, Buddhism, Eastern philosophies, whatever, right? Food, and a lot of these things. So unfortunately, when our Tibetans, even today, if you observe socially, when Tibetans go, and I've said this in a couple of interviews, when Tibetans go, they work so hard to get the opportunity to go to US, for example. They spend so much money, and then it takes it's such a challenge. It's like a lottery to go to America. So when they do get to go to America, and when they reach New York, for example, you know the first thing they want to do is they want to find other Tibetans. Where are the other Tibetans? Where is
Mhm.
Jackson Heights? Where can I get Gyagatsawa Haware? Like everything that you're familiar with, you're comfortable with. Gyagakhala, you know so uh, so we still have not been very exposed to different things, and art plays a very big role. I think art and culture, so we have not been exposed to that kind of mindset where majority of our Tibetans go to New York and say, oh my God, I'm in New York, I want to go to the Met. I want to go to see the Metropolitan Museum. I want to go see Guggenheim. I want to see, I don't know, like uh, the Bronx and the Brooklyn, and where hip hop started. I want to go, Little Italy, where Martin Scorsese is from. Francis Ford Coppola, and all these people had roots. And Scorsese made Mean Streets and Taxi Driver and all that. I want to go to Cafe Wa, where Bob Marley performed, or the Blue Note, where a lot of blues bands, famous blues bands, performed, or I don't know, Bob Dylan, West Village, Christopher Street. Like, so we don't have that yet. So I mean, sorry, I kind of went long on this, but but it's a very difficult question to answer and oversimplify it. Uh, but having said that, I think the solution to this is we have to expose ourselves to, and we have to be culturally sensitive to other people. Like we Tibetans are I always say raluk. Raluk means like radaluk, like herd mentality, right? So we watch what everybody else's watches. Like most Tibetans in America or India, and there's nothing wrong with it. Uh, but most of us are elder, my age group or younger or a little older. They all watch Kapil Sharma show, the Kalari talk. But there's nothing wrong with that, but there is still a very, very, very tiny percentage of Tibetans who watch, I don't know, Jimmy Kimmel or Jimmy Fallon or Bill Maher. You know, so
Yeah.
if we have to start opening up to these things, we have to start reading. We have to start, when you're in New York, learn about New York, learn about New York City. When you're in Paris, oh my God, like I mean, French Renaissance, Paris. That's the place where all these famous people, Picasso's and all these guys used to hang out in cafes, and you know so we have to expose our children, our younger generation, to these kind of literature. And then
Mhm.
I think we will develop confidence, because confidence comes from knowledge, and knowledge comes from exposure and interest. To be interesting, you have
Yeah.
to be interested, right? So you have to be
Mhm.
interested in learning. Yeah.
Actually, I'm glad that you're talking a lot about the younger generation because actually, Siddip Amla posted a video of your talk in Washington, D.C. And let me just say, I was really stunned watching it because for the first time in my life, this is when I heard a Tibetan elder, really speak about the issues in the Tibetan community.
Elder,
Oh, my bad. Sorry.
senior.
No, 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 no. But you know what I
I
mean.
still, I probably still have more energy than you two combined.
You probably do. You probably do. Um, but it was really like the first time in my life where I heard, a Tibetan person speak about issues in the Tibetan community that really do need to be addressed, Mara. But so many people are afraid to talk about these issues and concerns because of like backlash and whatever the case may be. There's a lot of talk on Facebook, WhatsApp, whatever. So
Yeah.
it was really inspirational hearing your perspective. And especially, when you are really advocating for the youth, and when you said in the video, and I quote, we have to let our younger generation dream. We lose a lot of possible potentials who could be so many other things in the context of singers, stand up comedians, actors, etc. Right? So, because in most cases, there are a lot of kids who want to follow their dreams, but, reality gets in the way or their parents want them to go to this Ivy League or this place or that, and a lot of things just sort of combust. So I guess my question is, what advice would you give to the younger Tibetan generation who may be struggling in finding a pathway or just are still in the early stages of finding their passion? Yeah.
Um. Uh. It's
Yeah, it's
it's
quite a lot.
yeah. How do I address this? Because I also don't want to sound preachy, because I'm not. I am somebody who's learned everything from trial and error, and
Hmm.
and then fortunately, my personality. I think I don't know how, but I've been able to kind of hone or kind of. Uh, cultivate a certain level of tenacity in me. So that I think helped me kind of propel and kind of take risks and face challenges. Um, but again, not everybody's the same. But we can kind of have certain templates, or and then kind of tailor make your own paths. So I think from my lived experience, not as an elder, but from my lived experience, I would like to tell all my young Tibetan brothers and sisters, young Tibetans. Firstly, I have a lot of hope in you guys. I've met a lot of young people all over the world, like Tibetans, and there is so much potential, and I'm very perceptive. you know there's so much potential, there's so much of curiosity, uh, there's so much there. Now, we unfortunately, our community, we still lack role models, let me rephrase it. We still lack relatable role models, role models that we can relate and we can kind of aspire to become like or even better. uh, so I think the young people, my advice would be, number one, do not compromise and do not kill your dreams, because I know for a fact every single one of you have a dream. A lot of the times, and this is not just Tibetans, this is all cultures around the world. Most of us, unfortunately, we have to kind of succumb to the norms of society, and then we kind of, we shun, or we kind of tuck our dreams under the rug, or we kind of throw it away, and then we kind of pretend like we never even had a dream. But I know for a fact most of you guys have dreams and aspirations, because, like, if you had a magic wand and you could choose the life you want, I'm sure every young person would choose a different life than they already have,
Mhm.
right? So that means there is that aspiration. So please do not kill your dreams. uh,
Yeah.
it is important to dream. And then number two, in order for us to dream, and in order for that dream to kind of materialize, we have to exercise our imagination. So do not limit your imagination. I've said this in the interviews too, we need Tengyubebu, me. We need more Tengyubebu people. We need people who are, because when you are imaginative, imagination gives birth to innovation. You know, innovation gives birth to everything else, technology, whatever. And then it kind of changes the way we live and how we live and how much we live, even, you know? So my advice is just, yeah, keep dreaming. Do not succumb your dreams, and do not, allow anything in the world to tell you that you're not allowed to dream or you're not allowed to imagine. But for these two to activate, there are some fundamental things that you need. You need to have discipline in your life. And when you're young, and rightfully so, we're not, even I was very young once. uh, you know we do lack discipline, we do lack, that sense of responsibility. We tend to become reckless, we tend to become short-sighted, which is all fine, because you're also meant to fall, you're also meant to fail for you to learn, for you to get up. So that is, holistically, you have to be able to look at all of that as a part of your journey to fulfill your dream. Um, Now, in order for your dream and your imaginations to come true, you have to have discipline, and you have to upgrade your knowledge every single day. Every day, keep learning. Every day, every day. Make a habit of learning new things, new word, new languages. You know, learn how to cook. These little things. It might sound like, okay, it doesn't make a difference, but all of these contribute to your personality and your character, and then they all compound, and then it builds you. It builds your inner strength. There's a saying, knowledge is power, information is power. What does that mean? If you're knowledgeable, if you're well informed, you obviously and automatically become powerful, because nobody can bullshit you, because you have so much knowledge and so much research and so much. And then also learning to be rational, and then learning how to be articulate, reading. Now, us Tibetans, I don't know why, but we Tibetans don't have a read culture of reading much. We don't read a lot. uh, so we should focus on reading, not just copy pasting cool quotes and posting it on your Instagram. If you're posting it, if you're posting on your Instagram post or stories, or even TikToks, if you're posting cool quotes by, I don't know, Picasso, or by His Holiness, or by Lincoln, or by whoever, right? Einstein. Make sure you read a little bit more about that. Who wrote that, and in what context did they say that? you know Uh,
Mhm.
and then why was it said? So when you go deeper, then you become more knowledgeable. Then you know the roots of that information, where it came from. And then I think learning new culture, new things, and keeping yourself upgraded all the time, I think it will contribute a lot to your personality, your confidence. And I'm speaking this, and I'm giving this advice from a lived and still living experience. I do that every day, even now. I'm learning every
Mhm.
day. Yeah.
Mhm. Mm.
I just want to make a quick comment on the video um, that my Amla posted. It's basically your talk, your talk before the you showed your movie at our humble jigang in Virginia.
Mhm.
I'm not sure if you recall. My mom has a small YouTube channel, so she posted on there, and she told me about the talk a little bit before.
Who's your mom?
I was Kunjo Bene. She's the Gangdo Amla.
That's your mom?
That's my mom. Yeah,
Wow. Oh, wow. What a small
yeah,
world. Yeah, she's a sweetheart. She's very sweet.
she is. Yeah. And before I was a little bit of a skeptic. My mom was like, "Durdangshin you all the time," and I was hearing about you, like because I wasn't introduced to your work before that. But then I watched the video, the full 45 minutes or somewhat,
Mhm.
and then it brought me to tears. Shenpenn La, truly. Um, One, I could hear the your sense of compassion, a true Buddhist. Um, and I could hear the passion in your voice. That's one thing. But two, it was so relatable to me as a young Tibetan. Um, the I have a Ajala. She worked in our Tibetan community here and there, and I'm not a female, but I remember her saying that as a Tibetan, as a Tibetan female, she never felt discriminated by her gender, but of her age. Shenpachi 인상, she felt discriminated. 낭조치기도 동조치기도
Mhm.
부모 인상 인제인데 처음 맞서는.
Ole.
And I felt that as a young person. Anytime I say something insightful at a Tibetan community, like a hall meeting,
Yeah, kind of
uh,
dismiss.
it they would like clap for me, but they won't clap for anybody else. And yes, they're trying to encourage me, but then that I somehow took that encouraging in a different way. And I think my Amna said in the video, she mentioned I have a 22-year-old me that I cannot control. And the first thing you said, that's good, that's the way to go. And an example is that
Because you're not supposed
right
to
out of
control.
yeah,
You're supposed to empower.
empower, right,
You're not supposed to impose. You're supposed to
right,
inspire.
right, exactly. That's a very you talked a lot about assimilation here. I think for parents, the concerns that my parents have for me is that I become too assimilated in the
Mhm.
community, and me as a I think I'm fairly engaged member of the Tibetan community, or I try to be. I truly attempt to be, but there's that internal conflict that's going on.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Whether it's as a Tibetan, whether it's as a youth. So, and a specific example is right out of high school, I chose to go to a community college rather than a 4-year college.
Mhm.
And Shinpin, like you spent your some of your young years here in the U.S. There's a lot of stigma that comes to a community college, even
Of
now.
course.
Um, my parents, my Amla and I had very numerous, let's say, discussions about those.
I went
Right,
to
me,
adult schools and night
right,
schools, and yeah, so it was even worse than yeah.
exactly. But I truly try to keep in mind the big picture. Like, after 2 years, I can transfer out. I'll be saving all this money, especially during COVID, where all the schools was over Zoom. So that's how I try to find the courage. Shambhala, I was wondering, you talked about discipline, and you've also empowered courage when you were having a uh, when you were analyzing the Tibetan community in that speech, in that talk, and some people could have thought of it as a critical or as a criticism,
Mhm.
and but you stated that you're not afraid of that criticism or being somewhat
Yeah.
banished from the Tibetan
I,
community. How do you find that?
yeah, I said I'm with.
Right.
How do you find that courage?
Yeah. I said I'm willing to be ostracized, and you know, um, yeah, um, courage. I think from my personal life, and um, I have, I don't know, I'm in this, in just in this one lifetime, I sincerely and so genuinely, I feel so grateful and fortunate to have lived such an expansive, enriched life where I have been able to do so many things and fail at so many things and still
Mm,
somehow be able to get back up and move forward, failing forward. You know, you fail, but you make sure you fail forward. Uh,
mhm,
and I think in my case, um, if we were to kind of do a chemical kind of experiment of, like my life, and if it was just composition of different things, chemicals, I think a chemical called courage actually genuinely played a very big role. Because today, in hindsight, when I think about it, um, I think the most uh, important fuel, or the most important thing that I had, which propelled me, which pushed me, which kept me going, is courage. And now, how did I cultivate that courage? Uh, I've somehow been, I don't know, blessed or whatever, uh, but I've grown up in a lot of fear too. So, when you talk about courage, it is imperative you talk about fear, because what is courage? Courage is basically overcoming your fears. When you learn to overcome your fear, that is courage. Uh, you know, there's a difference between courage and bravery, and all of that, right?
mhm,
So courage in my life came from utter need to to uh, do well in life, to prove myself, not to anybody else. In my case, I grew up. I'm not going to mince word, and I'm not going to pretend, but I had a very rough childhood, very rough, very traumatic, also. So I was always told, or even I was made to believe, that I'm useless, I'm good for nothing, I'm not capable of doing anything. And the irony is, today a lot of people think that I am this multi-talented person. you know I might be today, I might be, I'm multifaceted, but you know what, I was never talented enough. And these are the things I've learned in life. Talent and skills, yes, very, very, very tiny percentage of people are like so inborn, like they're like prodigy people, right? uh, but in my case, I've always been an underdog throughout my life. I was never the best kid in class, I was never good at anything, because I was so afraid. I was so afraid as a boy, as a young child, afraid of so many things. I don't want to get into that, but so I had a lot of fear. And on top of that, my entire world around me, right from my family to my neighbors, from my friend circle, from society, everybody made me feel like I am actually really good for nothing. And then when that happens, as a child, from a clinical psychological perspective, you will kind of begin to believe that. You will begin to believe that, okay, maybe something's wrong with me. And I had that conflict a lot. Like, I kind of believed that, okay, I'm not good enough. There's something wrong with me. But then there was also this constant voice from deep inside of me, a voice that was trying to scream out loud, saying, no, no. So, so I had this conflict between that voice, inner voice, and then the entire world telling me that.
Mhm.
Um, so so I felt, I don't know. I always knew that I had something different, because the way I looked at the world, the way I challenged authorities, the way I challenged social norms since I was a child, uh, kind of deemed me as this rebellious kid. But I actually wasn't trying to be rebellious. I wasn't trying to be mischievous. I wasn't trying to be a bad guy. You know, uh, I was just, if some things didn't make sense to me, I I always questioned, even if I would get into trouble, even if I would get, in our days, in our school days, we used to get beaten up, by teachers. So even though I knew that I was going to get beaten up or sent to
Yeah.
the principal's office, I would still question, because for me, the need to understand has always been important. The need to understand, like, you know, uh, so I think that kind of gave that edge and that fire. And then, I started listening to, today, when I look back, I started listening to a lot of heavy metal music when I was a young boy. And, of course, I like romance, and I like girls, and I was attracted to, in your adolescence, I was attracted to pretty girls from girls' school. When you're in like grade 7, 8, you have that. But I never had that I kind of submerged that romantic side, because I've always felt like I'm not good enough, so this is not going to go anywhere, the romantic side. Or if I so I would find refuge in heavy metal music, which is aggressive and which is dark, and which is
Mhm.
fast and heavy. Uh, so my family and a lot of people never understood why I was listening to this music, because to
Right.
them it's just ketsabu, but they don't understand the intricacy and
The
and
meaning. Yeah.
the musicianship that goes into playing heavy metal. And it is actually one of the only genres in the world that has the most dedicated fans. If you see a young kid as a teenager, if somebody is listening to heavy metal as a teenager, that person will still listen to heavy metal when he's 70 years old or 80 years old. But if you see a young kid listening to BTS today, that kid is not going to listen to BTS when he or she reaches 70. There is very deep.
Why? Why is that? Is that because like romance and love has a different
No, no, no,
sort of
no.
emotion compared to no?
I
There's
love
a di-
BTS.
there is no, no, I like BTS too, but this is not to shun BTS, right? Like
Yeah.
in my case, in our time, if you do a research on anthropological research on heavy metal too, punk music was meant to be very anti-government and rebellious, you
Oh,
know.
right,
Yeah.
right.
But heavy metal is basically neoclassical, just amped up, and then it's
Oh,
fast and
interesting.
it's aggressive. But heavy metal is, there's a lot of socio-political commentaries and a lot of things. And then, them wearing black and all of that. So nganzo chizo dinzo lamsa ta duga samgyur wa khonzola. But I have met some of the nicest people in the heavy metal community, and some of the most intelligent people also. But it's just that they don't agree with a lot of the things in the world, from the education system to the governance to the religions, and to a lot of things, media. So they created their own world. And then the genre of music, it became a refuge for a lot of young kids. So that's where they would go and vent their rage and anger and all of that. And then they're all very talented kids, because if you look at schools, if you pay attention, a lot of kids who listen to heavy metal, they're quite antisocial, they're quite like closed, but they're not bad kids. It's just that
Hmm.
they don't agree with a lot of things that is mainstream. So unless you are unless you are like a really like really really blessed pop star like Michael Jackson, because I still listen to Michael Jackson also. When I used to listen to him when I was a kid, and I still listen. But heavy metal is different. And mainstream music like BTS and I don't know, all these mainstream commercial music, it has very less art, and and too much entertainment, and then the new age, the cool factors and fashion and lights and camera angles and and hair and makeup, and there's a lot of stylizing. So a lot of young kids idolize
Mm,
them because they want to vicariously live through them, and they because they are not they want that life, but
right.
uh,
Do
uh,
you think they like those type of music try to please
yeah, yeah.
people more than the actual story
Yeah, but
itself,
people
right?
grow. People grow, right? So you like Namdol, you like BTS. Now you and I will talk 15 years from now. You know, at that time, you're not going to hate BTS, but you're not going to listen to BTS because your life
Right.
has changed. Your life has evolved. You have evolved. You have been through so much by then. You have been through, heartbreaks, and you have been through job losses, and you have been through family losses, and so many things have happened in your life. You know,
Mm, I see what
so
you
so I
mean.
mean there's so many reasons, and for this I think studying and understanding anthropology is very important. Um,
Hmm.
uh, there are people who have written dissertations, PhD dissertations on heavy metal music. It's very interesting. So
Oh,
I am still an ardent fan of metal. I just don't play it as much. But because of my heavy metal discipline, today I'm composing background soundtrack for my films. Uh, you know, so that discipline gave me more, the understanding of musicianship. And like if you look at 17th century and 13th century, 15th century classical musicians, like I don't know, like Beethoven and Mozart and Bach and Paganini, these guys, if they were alive in today's day and age, they would only want to play in heavy metal bands. They would, because their music is like heavy metal. It's just that heavy metal is neoclassical with distortion, and you know some of the best guitarists and some of the best drummers in the world are all metal drummers, man, metal guitarists. But it
so
is not mainstream, so it is not perceived that way. So
right.
we have been fed so much of nonsense and BS, indoctrinations by the mainstream world, by religion and by education system. And I mean, think about it. Why do you think industrial education is on top and arts is at the bottom, when arts is humanity, all of that is the most organic thing. The three of us, we're born in different times and different circumstances, but when we are born, we're all creative people because we are a part of creation. We're a part of evolution. So evolution and creation has everything to do with creativity, and creativity has everything to do with innovation and empathy and compassion and wisdom and spirituality and everything, you know. Uh, but we have been taught that you have to get this grade and you have to get into industrial education, like engineering and doctor, and anything that gives a nice designation. And kina arts logi la na kina la already that stigma you're in nang chung do that the lobjong ya
Mm,
bushita make you do
yeah.
arts. But there's who put these in place, right? Human beings. It's not that some heavenly body came down, or ta di kenzo engineering di thogala sha arts di wala sha lagyo marwa manzo to migi segurwa. Human beings made that. And what kind of human beings made that? Human beings that knew that there is immense benefit by doing that, by kind of pushing down arts, and by lowering the standards and the importance of arts. What happens? It is easier to control the world, because when arts is at the bottom, religion gets to thrive, governments gets to thrive, pharmaceutical companies gets to thrive, capitalist capital corporation gets to thrive. But if everybody was encouraged of arts and creativity, then everybody becomes very wise, and there's a lot of wisdom, so the our religions and our governments, they don't want people to be wise, and they don't want people to be deep. They don't want us to think. They want to make sure that they think for us. And that's what's been happening for centuries. So it is the artists that have always been a threat to the status quo. If you research, right? through any revolution, or you look at French history, you look at Roman history, you look at Persian history, you look at Western Saxons, anywhere, you look at the Mongolians, you look at us, India, you know, artists have always been feared by governments and religion.
And in
You know,
Tibet too, there's a lot
yeah,
of censorship over art as well.
censorship. Nganzu,
Yeah.
nganzu Nyemane, that is today by Chinese, but even us Tibetans, because we were governed by the monastic system for centuries. So the monastic system, see, there's a difference between Buddhism and monastic system and Lamaism, right? There's a
Mm.
huge difference. I'm a Buddhist, and Buddhism saved my life. So the ultimate meaning of, if you are a real Buddhist, if you have a deep understanding of Buddhist, then you will become creative. You will become an atheist if you are a real Buddhist, because Buddhism is the science of mind.
Mm.
Buddhism is supposed to enable and unlock and activate your mind. But our monastic systems and a lot of our cultures, and even in India, like not the Hinduism but Brahmanism, even in the
The yoga
Christian world,
class.
all these, what they've done is they have made sure that the mind is not unlocked, the mind is not activated. So it's all fear based. So that's why people don't. And then these are the reasons why art is at the bottom in education system. Industrial education's on top, and industrial education is all about profit. And then if you look at the devastation of environment today, that comes from industrial education background. If you look at pharmaceutical companies, if you look at medicine in India, MBBS in Ari medicine, when you look at the course and the syllabus, who regulates that? The pharmaceutical companies, you know, right? So if you
Yeah.
look at India, there was a fairness cream called Fair and Lovely,
Fair and Lovely, right?
right? Fair and Lovely has made billions, my dear, but nobody has
Mm.
actually become fair. But that is the power of marketing,
Definitely.
advertisement, and then fear. So I mean, there's so many things we can talk about, but there's a reason why I am the way I am, and I talk about the things that I do, even though I know that I can be a very
Hmm.
it can be a very lonely place, uh, you know
Yeah.
but
There's
it's
a
important
there's
to
a
understand.
Yeah, there's a saying that like art is irreplaceable. Art is one of a kind. You can't ever replace art because it's just unique. It's a form of life. And I
Yes,
thought that's really powerful because actually I have a band recommendation for you. It's not really heavy metal, I think, but do you know the Who, like the
yeah,
Mongolian rock band? I
of
love
course,
them.
I
They're
listen to
amazing.
them
Like,
a lot.
yeah,
Yeah,
their art style is like beautiful.
yeah. So konzo rikshung torshi tange marwa. Konzo, they are experimenting and they're progressive. You know,
Mhm.
Nganzo, if you look at in the name of Rikshung, because it is such a sensitive thing. I am a I'm a very proud Tibetan. I'm very proud Tibetan. I love our culture. I love our traditions. I love our history. I love our philosophy. But I'm also somebody who says that it should be progressed, it should be evolved, it should keep evolving. And that is the nature of Nangche. Nangche has the ability to evolve with time. Buddhism 500 years ago and 2000 years ago was very different from today, because Buddhism has the ability to adapt. But the Bible does not have the ability to adapt. The New Testament does not adapt. you know Quran does not adapt. The Bhagavad Gita does not adapt. But especially in Nangshe, Buddhism is such a crystallized version of our human mind, actually. So our human mind can evolve with different times and different circumstances. uh, so I think so it is so important for us to uh, of course understand that rikshung nyaya, the kei nyaya pe kechumbre, but rikshung nya, rikshung gotse, and dijela rikshung la yage tangya die kechumbre ba. Manzo rikshung yage tango la nge
Yeah.
sue mendo. Rikshung nya gore nya yage tango to penchashane, very simple thing. Manzo sumjagi peshe koyore, the traditional songs, and
Hmm.
manzo sumjagi uh, Tibetan dance 통일와 안주 고르셰도다 즉 샵도 또 tinsa lakarla mangba tabgido anzu pheba khawaine.
Oh.
If you observe, and again, I'm not criticizing, this is not a criticism, but as somebody who is creative, and somebody whose mind is so activated, and I'm thinking a lot of things. Oh, it could be this way, it could be that way. I see so much possibilities. I'm somebody who sees so much positivity and possibilities in everything. Even in the most challenging and the difficult times, you have to be able to see opportunities, right? So I see so many opportunities when I see Gorshe, for example, because right now our Gorshe is like somebody pressed auto repeat. So there is few steps, and then the entire song and the entire songs, it's the same step. There's a 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 one,
Mhm.
so that entire thing just, so it's like you just do it once and then you just auto tune it or auto repeat it, and then it's fine. Then you know after one kind of phrase or one bar or one rhythm, I'm like, why can't we think of something else to do? Why can't we kind of create some new moves and new structure or new rhythm? Why do we have to do the same thing? Because those dances did not exist 2000, 5000 years ago, if we really want to talk about rikshung. So it has to evolve. But nganzo evolved da dila yake taya gi keja for example, jamnge. Nganzo jamnge, our Tibetan lute, is such a beautiful instrument, you know. And the Western scale is do re mi fa sol la ti do re. The Eastern scale is, Indian scale is so much more complicated and
Yeah,
complex. The Indian, but our Tibetan is
Sagamapa.
la re so. These three notes, and then that's how the tuning is done. But I've told a lot of my Tibetan musician friends, I'm like, why don't why don't we create more, make it more advanced? Because, for example, Japan also has a similar instrument. Nanzo dramnge dobu. Chikpa ke dobu yore, lute. So there is these two guys in Japan. They're called Yoshida brothers. Yoshida brothers did the soundtrack for The Last Samurai with Tom Cruise.
Oh, I
They
love the
got,
movie.
so Yoshida brothers played traditional music with that lute, but what they did was they kind of experimented with orchestra and with heavy metal and with jazz and blues, and they have been able to explore so much, and they have been able to make it even more advanced amplifications. And we have not, we don't dare, we are not daring enough to try new things, and anybody that tries new things, it's blasphemy. you know
Yeah.
so you have to have courage to do that. And bagi kerang gitu, what they're going back, what is courage? Courage kadul ligire khandil ligire kena kulung changma yona, kulung lana intention, kena
Mm.
intention, the motivation di changma yu, kerang gi chizo yake tanya che tu samlo tangi yu, mi changma la phenya che tu samlo tangi yu, lo chunga din tu changma la phengire samne samlo tangna logo chenpo cha dore, because gakpa chenge yu na re, nawa mandronge yu na re, kena kulung changma ba, and kena samlo mangpo tang ni shekyo keja chirwa, degas te po ne te lang ne shekyo marba. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like for me, I think for in my life specifically, arts plays a big role in my life. I've been in my school's dance team. I love singing. I love playing damye. I love playing the flute. Like all that. It's like my passion. I love to sing. And actually, I'm going to Gershon in like maybe 3 hours in New York. So I'm ready to go. But I think that there's
But think
people
about
who,
what I just said about the
yeah, I'm gonna
Goshe.
look now.
Like,
But
why
there's
do we
literally,
repeat? Like I tell
yeah.
my Amla loves dancing and singing Tibet, but
Mm,
Amla, like, think of something, be creative.
yeah.
You put in some new moves, you add some new things.
Yeah, maybe I'll go today and I'll add some new dance steps and maybe people will follow me. But I just wanted to say, like, I guess that's for me how I really got into the Tibetan culture and especially religion. And that's when I realized the importance of what being a Tibetan is. And I noticed that, you talked a lot about Buddhism and you following the Gyalrumche and all that. So, and you talked also a lot about how heavy metal has played a big part in your life. So how has, Buddhism and the teachings of Gyalrumche played an impact on your life and how it got you to be, as successful as you are today?
Uh, well, Nangche, Buddhism has
Yeah.
played a very big role, but Buddhism is like the core. It's like the main core for me, where I go to. And then,
Right.
but for reference, there is so many other things that other cultures I've learned. Like I've learned a lot from like Sufi culture, Persian culture, like from Jalaluddin Rumi and Hafez and Khayyam, and from the Greek philosophers like Aristotle and Socrates and Plato, and from these Austrian philosophers and thinkers like Friedrich Nietzsche, you know, and everybody in India too, like Shanti Deva and Nagarjuna and Atisha and all. There's so much, but one thing I've observed is most of these wisdom from all over the world have some root or some influence from Buddhism. Even the
Mm.
Romans, even the Greek philosophers, even so many. You look out at throughout centuries. You look at different cultures. Rumi is a 12th century poet. But if you listen to him, there's so much of Nangche in it. If you listen to Socrates and Aristotle, Aristotle says knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. That's Nangche. Nang chila na boogie. Soso nang boogie. Soso bula. Kira soso soso. How do you illuminate? Not sorry. How do you illuminate yourself? How do you know fill yourself with so much light that you cannot help but radiate light to others? So in order to do that, you have to know yourself very well. And knowing yourself is the first religion. So they're all connected. So Buddhism has played a very big role, and it's like my main go-to. And then His Holiness is like the epitome, and he's like the living kind of embodiment of that Buddhism, uh, because I look at the life he's had, and I look at it from a very critical perspective. I look at it from a very objective perspective. I look at it from a historical perspective. I look at it from a socio-political, socio-cultural, psychological perspective, from different angles. Um, to be the 14th Dalai Lama and to have gone through what he went through, and losing, his country and so much. I mean, everybody knows. I don't have to tell His Holiness' story. Everybody knows. But for him to go through all that and still maintain so much of uh, compassion and peace towards everyone, for him to be so forward thinker, like you know and this is the biggest irony in our community, because we all love His Holiness, we all love the Dalai Lama, and especially our elders. But our elders, they always seem to forget that the Dalai Lama is perhaps one of the most open-minded and progressive spiritual person. But the elders who follow them are not open-minded and not progressive. But they say they follow, because look at His Holiness. I mean, His Holiness is so much into science and technology. He has been working on this Mind and Life Institute for so long, for over a couple decades now, with neuroscientists and psychologists and psychiatrists and neuroscience, neurologists, right? And he's so much into technology. He's so open-minded. When can a human become very comfortable and open-minded with everyone? When that person is very secure, when there is an absence
Yeah.
of insecurity. His Holiness has no insecurity at all with other religions, with other people, with even the biggest nemesis of his life, the Chinese government. He's always talking compassionately about them. So so for me, to to have an embodiment of a leader like him in our community, and as Tibetans, I feel very fortunate and blessed, because spiritually he is a role model. Ta nganzo jikdemba bula kapore ine nganzo chö gi samlo tangne minde nang chö ki tadup ta denzo samlo tangne pemmasi ta khonso chogi chik tawa kheta khonso chogi khare inerda. I think Hang Sayare. And then a lot of people forget, he's also a seasoned politician. He's
He's a master strategist.
Oh, because he's been playing politics since Eisenhower, Dwight Eisenhower's
Wow.
time,
Oh my God.
and Nehru's time, and he's still around, and in from his time, from the day he started politics till now, You know, Malcolm X has come. You know, Gandhi has come, Nelson Mandela has come, so many
Desmond
great minds.
Tutu.
John F. Kennedy has come, you know, Diana has come, Prince Charles has come, Queen Elizabeth has come. Now King Charles is here. You know, he he has withstood so much, and there is nobody else on this planet who has done that for that long with the
Yeah.
same amount of grace and same amount of compassion. And and his compassion, I feel, is the right. I think when he talks about compassion, Nganzo, most people, we mistake kindness for compassion.
Yeah.
Mykyobula kalatea, the Mykyobula ropachia is kindness. It is an offshoot of compassion, but the real compassion has to be intelligent. Without intelligence, compassion is not sustainable. And for sustainable compassion, you have to be intelligent and you have to have immense empathy. Because what is compassion? Compassion is me being able to put myself in front of in the shoes of somebody who hates me. Compassion is meditating in chaos. It's very easy to meditate with goji berry drinks and temperature controlled rooms and rainbows and butterflies and and like birds chirping and peacocks around and waterfall, and then you meditate. It's very easy because the environment is supportive. But when you learn to meditate in front of people that don't like you, in an environment where people are hating on you, where there's war, where there's negativity, where there's all of that, so you don't escape, so you choose to be in the middle of chaos and be compassionate. That takes a lot of depth and intelligence.
Yeah. I think that's like one thing I really appreciate of Buddhism. There's that human aspect, the heart aspect, but there's that intelligence aspect. There's that, you know, 그런 전주심 aspect, but then there's that 동번이 aspect.
Yes,
Like you need both, and they both complement one another.
absolutely.
And I truly appreciate how you um, analyze or appreciate Gyaro Rinpoche's legacy through all these different lenses. And you, of course, to us as Tibetan Buddhists, he is a sangye. But when you analyze it through these different perspectives, it actually increases your appreciation and gratefulness for Gyaro
Yes.
Rinpoche.
And also,
Um,
it's so much of inspiration I get, because it is one thing to revere him and look up to him and praise him, but it is a completely different thing to imbibe his teachings and to kind of try and live by it and try to expand yourself, also. So
Shameful. That's exactly where I was going. You've always talked about we need a Tibetan Richard Gere, we need a Tibetan Nancy
Yeah.
Pelosi, right? And that's I do appreciate Gyaro Rinpoche as a living Buddha, but I also I try and I aspire to be him every day.
yeah.
Like I try to have that openness, and his compassion. I have a Chimpin, if you don't mind, I have a video, a short 1 minute video. I just want to get your thoughts. It's about Gyalrum's optimism, about him returning to Tibet. You may have seen it.
I hope the viewers will have patience and watch this interview.
Sorry,
No, I said I hope your viewers will have patience and watch, this interview and have kind of discussions about it.
I hope so as well. But even just for us, it was truly immense. And I learned a lot.
Yes, yes, I've seen
I
the
don't.
video.
I really don't understand what the little girl is saying, but then just Gyalrum's optimism and his approach and his response to the girl was, I think that's what moved my heart.
His videos very, yeah. my
Yeah.
god, I'm getting teary eyed. It's like
No, it
very
is.
like
It is a
touching.
very powerful image, and but we have to understand the reality. We have to understand that that is the truth that we deserve. Our truth, the Tibetans' truth, and then our right. Nganzu kebe toptandi, nganzu gi dembadi konsucho pöla pa petuyadi. That is the truth. That is. It's not a unreasonable demand at all. If there is a black and white case in the world, Tibet is probably it. You know, uh, so what the little girl wished for. I mean, I'm sure the little girl is, from a psychological perspective, like I'm being very critical, right? I'm sure the little girl is also, um, she has been influenced and indoctrinated by her parents for sure, and then, which is fine in this case, the reverence and all of that, and then all the words that comes out of her mouth, there seems to be a rhythmic uh, practice in it, and I think it's okay, but the little girl's heart is in the right place. The sincerity is right in the right place. The innocence is in the right place. And I think His Holiness's response is not to, uh, it, from a psychological perspective, his response to the little child was not to her prayers. It wasn't to her, intelligence. It wasn't. It was to her innocence, you know, because His Holiness is so sensitive. And this is what I mean by intelligent compassion. So he understood, this child's psyche is constructed in such a way, and this child is bearing the burden of such a big, issue and big wish. It's a very, very huge wish for a child to carry. So His Holiness recognizes that, and I think that's why His Holiness, with like everyone else, he's so kind and affectionate, and consoling her and telling her that we will go, we will be in Tibet, we will go to the Tsoklahang, and in Lhasa, and so he's basically playing, he's playing a true Buddhist and a psychologist at the same time, because Buddhism is the highest form of psychology. So we have to also learn to understand things spiritually. We have to learn to understand holistically, and we also have to learn to understand things, logically, rationally, psychologically, not just emotionally. Unfortunately, us Tibetans, we tend to look at things, we tend to conceive things, we tend to perceive things only on emotions, like emotionally only. Because if the danger of doing that is our emotion, if it is only emotional driven, then the chances of it getting displaced is very high. If your emotions are guided by intelligence and rationality, then you know then it'll be fine. It's like watering a plant. If I say I love this plant very much, and if I keep watering the plant, then the plant's going to die. So the intelligence comes in, and the intelligent compassion comes in and teaches me that how much to water the plant, when to keep the plant in the sun, when to keep it in the shade, what time of the day. So all of that discipline is
Mm.
basically nangxue. It's compassion. you know I don't know if it
I,
makes sense
I,
to you guys.
no,
Yeah,
I
that makes
appreciate
sense.
that because when I think about Buddhism and I think about the logics and the reasoning, I find I have more confidence and conviction in Buddhism. So I really appreciate that analysis.
Yeah.
Um, I know we're over time, but before we wrap up, before Namdo wraps us up, I just have a quick topic that I'm like especially curious about, personally curious about. Like when I watched your interview with Aha Moment Pujunkata, uh, big fan. Uh, you went to Nepal after the earthquakes, and you've meant over your time period. You said you've mentored um, a lot of people. a lot of kids. You said you recently you hopped off a call, like a 3 hour call with a young boy in New York. I've personally, I don't know if mentor is a formal word, but informally have mentored, a few Tibetan youths around me, non-Tibetan youths, just the people around me. Whenever I have an opportunity to help, I try to do that. Um, but sometimes there's difficulty with mentoring. Like you feel like you have to put in more initiative. Sometimes they don't come to you always. Do you have any like quick tips for me about how to become a better mentor? What's that good dance like balancing like me reaching out to them versus having them take the initiative, reach out to me? Do you have any quick tips before Namto wraps us up?
Quick tip. I think in my case, firstly, I think just all the viewers and all the listeners, it is absolutely important to have mentors in our life. Everyone should have a mentor. I have had many different mentors throughout my life. So mentorship is very important, even in the corporate world, even in the creative world, even in the monastic world, even if wherever it is, we have mentors. Mentors are basically guides and teachers, especially that live by example. You know, so I think my quick tip is, uh, whenever we are mentoring the younger people or kids or even friends, uh, it is important to mean what you say and say what you mean and do what you say as the mentor. Because there is a difference between giving elderly advice and being a mentor. The true meaning of mentor is somebody who lives by what he is imparting with others. So I think that is the most important tip, which is again psychological. If you live by it, it might be difficult in the beginning. Anything that happens very easily will not last. Anything that has gone through certain amount of struggle, a certain amount of difficulty, becomes very solid. The foundation becomes very solid. So, uh, so when you mentor, make sure that you are, in principle, you are doing that yourself. You're living by it, and then keep upgrading and keep learning. And
Okay.
then one of the technical skills of mentoring. This is a technical thing, and I think we Tibetans, in general, we have to work on this skill a lot. This technical skill, the skill and the art of listening. We Tibetans are very poor listeners. When you listen, even elders, even our parents' generation, younger generation, most Tibetans, I have found, and even in this part of the world, I think it's an Eastern thing, Eastern countries, Asian countries, we don't listen to understand. We listen to respond. So there's a big difference. Nganzo gotsoya chetung nyengore. Gotsoya chetung nyenna ane len gyadikala len di ting sarbo da tembu cha tu gyore. Nganzo gotsoya chetung mangem che nganzo len gyaya chetung nyengyore. So len gyaya
Mhm.
chetung nyendikala nganzo ting sarbo to thugyo mari, because nganzo ki dikabla ngaranzo ki ngarge to da ego to da dinzu dunlene, that we are just responding, you know, instead of understanding. So this is a technical skill that we all have to work on. I have been working on it for a long time. I'm still working on it. I'm still learning that. And I've learned this from a lot of amazing people, Chigel Ngimi, Hang Sai, and Dimang Batunyo, and they've taught me that. And it makes so much sense. So when you're listening to kids, like today, I know I'm your guest, so I'm talking a lot, and I have, because of my life and everything, I have more experience than you guys in the Jigtengi. So I'm talking a lot and you guys are listening. But I was also listening to your questions and paying attention to what your questions are. So when you're mentoring your peers and your friends and your younger generation, make sure you listen to them, even if they don't make sense to you. You
Mhm.
might say, "Oh my God, chumege ke je shegido." It's for you, it might be chumege. For me, but for that guy, that is the reality at that moment in his world. So to
Mhm.
understand where he or she is coming from, to understand why he or she is thinking like that, then you can deconstruct and help him unlearn that. So
Mhm.
I don't know if that makes sense.
Is a solution to trying to lower your ego
Yeah.
and trying to Okay,
Yes.
got it.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Chidangi ego di nganzu tsangmali yorba. Ngala
Mhm.
ina yore nganzu tsangmali yore. Ta ine ngaran tisa ngegi diglam da ngaran sugi ngima takpa gi nyamle gi ngaran soso gi nyamle chi yorba. Digi chene ngegi ngage di lamsang ngeng washingi tu. Lamsang hako
Yes.
tu. So
Mhm.
anytime my ego kicks in, I detect it and I recognize it right away. And then I
Mhm.
do this, you know,
Got it.
and then so it's this is self training and discipline, and this is what life is, you know.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so just to wrap it up, before I wrap it up, I actually want to recommend you another group. They're called Tagshugs. They're a Ladakhi folk rock group, and I love music, so I love like exploring
Cool.
different types of groups. But they play with the damyen, like so many other Tibetan instruments, and have like their own alternative. So it's like I think it's really cool. So you definitely listen to
I
them.
I I I, I
Um,
have I have checked them
oh,
out.
you have.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, they're one of my favorite groups. Okay, now thank you so much, Shimpinla. I just want to say once again, thank you so much for coming here on Pija, and really, because people like you who are not afraid to step out of their comfort zone, for them to really follow their dreams, it's such an inspiration for younger Tibetans like me and Sidu, and it really gets us really connected back to our Tibetan roots. And even just by doing this interview in English, I know some people have their thoughts. It's just we're trying to really connect. Yeah, exactly. Like we're just trying to connect with everybody. And you also said in the past, just because I have it written down somewhere, but just because you don't speak Tibetan fluently, it doesn't make you any less Tibetan. And I
Yeah.
thought also that was very powerful because it is true, assimilation. We're assimilating to to a new culture, but I mean, you have to learn Tibetan, like I feel like, in my opinion. But just the fact that you're still trying your best to, get to a point of fluency, I think is the most important part of a journey.
Yes.
But yeah,
I
I
think
just wanted to say thank you.
I think that the notion of Tibetanness is more important than anything else, because
Right.
the language can be learned, the cultures can be adapted and learned. But how are you going to learn how to be a Tibetan, how to be a proud Tibetan? How are you going to learn that? So we Tibetans and elders minganzu mi gyambatsu gi 가르쳐 버스나 로충하든주 뭐 코란즈 구류기 전에 카요 말에 베게 주규규 yaptugiyo 말에 망부지 고츠기요 말에 코란즈 논주 말에 키란즈 진달라 지게 부궁염도 주제 게 구스 키란즈 바게땅기요레 룽바니 지게 룽바레 TV तानानी इंची की प्रोग्राम रे खवा ताना के इन्हें किरांजो धोना चिगियो रे दी हंग साया रे तो nganzu gemba zu karche gorsena pyoge mashena ere nganzu mimbor pe nyungyurwa nganzu mi pe nyungyurwa nganzu mi nyungyu yodigala what we have to do is nganzu changma tsu kongya tapshe chewol pyoge shenai mashenai because nganzu la thangbu mi gogyorba mi khora mena rikshung kares nya mi yona gyurwa nganzu ki gyut chesho di nganzu ki mi nyungyurwa ta di mi nyungyu di nganzu dakbo gyapshen gor an dakbo gyane nganzu changma gi khoranzu changma la ya bigya tangor ya bigya tang
Yeah.
ya le chage
Yeah.
dinzu
Right.
ki ya tengor konzola ma denge dinzu ki ya bigya tangor ani nganzu
Right.
kulung da tawa da nganzu samlo tang da dinde kina ngone thane an nangchwe da sangchwe di ngone ide pat khora ya puturwa ani so I think it is very important and I'm proud of you all. Keep dreaming, keep learning. I am a living example. If I can do it, anybody can do it, because I've always been an
Preach.
underdog. I have always been a very, very less talented person. So I worked on my talents. I worked and worked and worked. And today, now, as you guys are probably aware, I'm directing Hollywood film and Bollywood film, both. And I'll be, the first Tibetan to do so, and write and direct and compose the entire background music.
Wow.
It is
That's
possible.
your resume is quite
Shampiyona, where
long.
can they find you if any of our listeners want to reach out to you?
Instagram, I think it's the best. I don't have TikTok and all that, but Instagram and Facebook. So Instagram is Shenpen_K. Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
yeah.
And
And
Namjoon, you have a quote
yeah,
for us?
right. So at Pidja, we ended off with a quote from Yarmbuche. So the quote that I wanted to say today is, "If you think you are too small to make a difference, try sleeping with a mosquito." And I
Mosquito.
think, this is a great quote for today's episode because, we started from the bottom, but now we're here, especially you, Shindala. So I really wanted to talk about that quote.
Yes,
I'm so
yes.
proud of, everybody right now.
Sane
So,
sane ya kegyo di kadyo ne tembu yore. namne kena ya go yomar ridur mane ya ke khatune. It takes time. It took me a long time, so don't give up, you guys. And I'm always here for you guys. Anytime you want to reach me, anytime you feel down, anybody. Nganzu peba pugu to depress you nge inere, lonely you nere, kenanzu semba maki bachagi you nere, kenanzu bed, dark thoughts, suicidal thoughts lena kuchi ngala tewachi. Nge dinju changmang yamnyo chisa ngaran so. I've been through all of that. So lots of love, and I love you all, and I'm very proud of you all, and keep it up.
Thank you
Thank
so much,
you.
Shenpenn. 도전아.
Tajiche.
Vision